Triangle JavaScript. So tonight is obviously Polymer, and I actually have quite a few announcements, and we actually have some really awesome stuff. Thanks to Terry for bringing that in to give away. I've got a free ticket to a conference in Richmond, Virginia, so might be whoever wants it can have it. But first off, I want to thank Bandwidth for hosting us for the pizza, beer, drinks. It's always nice to have that stuff at these, and we really appreciate all the help in the space. And actually, I think, do you guys want to say something here at the beginning? And
hey guys, thanks so much for coming. Any of you guys ever been on our campus before or been here? Raise your hand. Yeah. So we've been here on Centennial campus for coming on 2 years in October. I'm the recruiting manager, Allison Clayton, and this is Mandy Roberts, and she heads up our technical recruiting. So we just wanted to welcome you guys. Thank you so much for being here, and tell you just a little bit about Bandwidth and how long we've been around, and then also just talk a little bit about some of the positions that we have open. So we've been around since '99, but again, just in this building for the last 2 years. We were off Weston Parkway for a while. Then we have two business units. We have Business Solutions, and we have Republic Wireless. How many of you guys have heard of Republic Wireless? Okay, awesome. So we have Business Solutions. Yeah, we have a total of about 408 employees, almost 410 now. So we've got close to about 20 positions open right now that we're actively recruiting on. And so we'll leave these in the back with Mandy's cards, and she heads up all of the technical recruiting, like I mentioned before. I've also got Ed Hintz here. He was just going to speak really quickly about, he's our one of our development managers for our Business Solutions division, and just tell you guys a little bit about some of the technologies really quickly and some of the positions that we've had open and worked on. He's been great to work with. He helps us with all of our recruiting and does all of our interviews, and seems to have a good time with us every now and then. So this is Ed Hintz. I'll let him speak for a second.
Hi, welcome everybody. We're excited to host this. We do a lot of web development here, and we're big fans of JavaScript as well.
Right.
We also do a lot of Node.js in our development, Java. I lead a group that's called the Incubation Group, and we take a lot of ideas that we have and start it from the idea phase and get it to the minimal viable product phase. So we're doing a lot of lean development. We're using AWS, a lot of things out in the cloud. Really, really exciting things. Before I came here, I was at Microsoft for 10 years. And the whole rest of my career, I always felt like there was, you had to make this choice between doing really exciting stuff and not having much of a life, or doing not so exciting stuff and having more time in life. And Bandwidth is the first place I've come across in my career where you can actually be doing really exciting work and still have good work-life balance.
All right, thanks,
and if you have any questions, feel free to come up afterwards.
When we'll have anything back for you.
yeah, and so there's going to be quite a few stuff, or quite a few. I don't know if that makes sense. There's a lot of stuff on that back table that you can just take. So Luke actually provided some of it with the all the Google stuff. Luke is going to present with me tonight. So he's going to do the sort of like base of all of Polymer, which is the web component piece, and then I'm going to do the easier part, which is Polymer, so you don't have to worry about what Luke shows you. I think Luke is just going to prove to you that it's really painful to not use Polymer. So just a few announcements. Let's look at Triangle JavaScript first. So the next meetup is October 18th or 15th at Dude Solutions. My sister just started there. It's a pretty cool company. I think they just raised a ton of money through funding. And so Lightning Talks, if you haven't been to a Lightning Talk, everybody that wants to speak can. You have 10 minutes. Get up and you can do slides. You can show an application. I mean, really, it's 10 minutes for you to say what you're excited about. And those actually have been some of our most successful meetups, just because it's like rapid fire, and you get exposed to a lot of things in a really short period of time. And then after that, I don't really have anything. So if anybody has any suggestions or anything that they want to talk about, we can put it up there. And then I think also through the website, this has happened a few times where somebody will suggest a talk, and then if enough people say they want to have that talk, then it just automatically gets scheduled, and we have to deal with it. So, so other things, all things open. This is coming up October 22nd. I can't remember the price, but I know it's really cheap. I think it's in the like $100 to $200 range. And the guys that are setting this up have contacted me, and they actually came out and talked at one of the meetups, and they said something about a promo code that they would give us, but I have failed to follow up with them on that. So I can get it and post it to the entire group. So if you're interested and want a bit of a discount, we can work that out.
Yeah, one thing there, I think the price is going up somewhere during this week.
Is it? Okay. And I was just scrolling through this list before we got started here, and this is, just looking at the company names, and there's even name recognition within this group here. It just keeps going, and I always like to point out Carlos. There's Carlos, but it goes on and on. So there's another one. I'm not entirely sure about this one, just because I don't know a whole lot of information about it. But I had a guy contact me and say that he's got a conference coming up in Richmond, Virginia, called Converge. It's all about, I guess, front-end type stuff. So he's offered me a free ticket to give out. So if anybody's going to be in the Richmond area on October 10th and would like to go, just contact me, and I'll just give you the details, and you can attend for free. So that's pretty cool. Anything else? Does anybody have anything that they want to plug, or anything that anybody's really excited about? Anything? Nobody's excited about it? Okay, there we go.
Yeah. Ken Auer, I'm the founder of Role Model Software. Like, evidently, this place, we have life and fun stuff. And we did basically a small high-performance team. We're looking for JavaScript, front end and back end, and experienced folks, and a new design director, actually. So, if you're one of those, interested in
And I think, so I think I just heard the word Destiny over there. So I just want to say, I think we might be short a few people tonight because Destiny came out not too long ago. Shaoshin actually was considering not coming because he wanted to level up. I heard that, or I saw some email where if you get to level 26, there's this new campaign that's coming out that only people that are at level 26 and up can actually do. So, yeah, I'll see you guys later. I'm like level 5 right now, which kind of stinks. But anyway, so tonight we're going to start off by talking about web components. Luke Dary, I'll let you introduce yourself, but I work with Luke, and we've done this once before for Luke's Google developer group, and it went pretty well, and I guess we're just going to do it again. Yeah.
I'll give you guys a second. So just as a show of hands, who here knows about the Google developer group for the Triangle? I see a couple of people maybe that have come to meetings. So the Google Developer Group is something, we're not actually Google. We are a meetup, but we're focused on Google technologies. So it's not strictly front-end, but because of the front-end population of developers in the area, we do a lot of like Angular and things like that. I try not to step on the heels of the other meetup groups that do things. So like if you are interested in Go, there's a meetup for that. So we did a partnership with them. We meet every first Tuesday of the month, either at American Underground in Raleigh or Durham. This coming month, in October, we'll be meeting in Raleigh to discuss
Android TV?
Chromecast and Android TV, that's right. And just look at the APIs for those. Show of hands now, how many people have experimented or looked at Web Components or Polymer before tonight? Okay. So Web Components, the future web, as we'll call it. Did you have the repo, like the GitHub one open somewhere? Let's see.
Am I funny?
Am I funny? I don't know. So I'm just going to do, this really is, as Kyle said, I want to show you the basics and the foundation that is laid underneath Polymer so that then you can say, wow, Polymer is really great. So hopefully when Kyle gets up, you'll be like, yes, I'm so glad. But this is Web Components. If you're going to simplify this down, it's really 4 pieces. It's custom elements, the shadow DOM, HTML templates, and imports. And then I linked some best practices in there because Kyle will admit to not being an expert at Polymer. I'm also not an expert at Web Components, so there's things that you'll have to learn after this. Hopefully this will be a taste and you can go on. Browser support right now is kind of sparse as far as native support goes, but there are polyfills and things to bring a lot of, well, they're still like IE9 and up, they can still be kind of retrofitted to do a lot of this. And then hopefully this will endear me to the audience here. Is it a toy? No, it's a versatile interlocking brick system for the web. Any Lego movie fans? No? Okay, I have a 2-year-old, so I'm a big fan. So I'm just going to dig into these 4 things, and hopefully you'll get a taste for it, and then you'll see how Polymer kind of interacts with this. In the spec for custom elements, the W3C has essentially said they can be whatever you want as long as it has a dash in the name. So something like super duper app with a dash is valid, something without a dash is not. Probably don't need to go much further than that. So to demonstrate that, back on this lovely page here, if you have a custom element and it has a dash, the browser will take that and say, well, okay, I don't know what to do with that because it's not defined, but at least it's named properly. So let's see here. So if you look, I've got this cool. Yeah.
Is the color scheme okay? Yeah.
Anyone yellow blue colorblind? Okay. So I've got this cool new social network that I want to start, and I've been reading about these web component things. So my Match Meetbook Overflow Plus is the next best thing. Everyone's going to be on it. MBOP for short. So I've read about these custom elements, so I created some. But to demonstrate what happens if you don't name it properly, so let's look at this song tag. I've styled it in a way, let's see, that forces okay, so I have color and stuff on this. I don't have a border, and you'll notice that it does not, this bottom one here does not have the red border like everything else does. So the custom elements that are valid, they will by default receive this unresolved pseudo class. And so if it's invalid, you can still style it and do whatever you want. The browser isn't going to know what to do with it. And that's kind of the difference. If you create your own custom element, it's not XML where you can just name it whatever you want. You have to have a specific name. So unresolved is a pseudo class that will get put on a custom element that isn't defined, isn't instantiated. Once you instantiate it, and then let's see, we'll jump back and forth here. You do this in JavaScript, otherwise we wouldn't be here, right? We'd be somewhere else. And so the JavaScript looks like this. And I'm doing this when I did this for our group, I actually did live coding. I'm going to treat this like a cooking show and say, this is the one I prepared ahead of time. But it starts with document.register element. So if you wanted to somehow do some graceful degradation or something and do feature checking, you can check for register element. If it's not there, the browser can't do even the basic fundamentals with web components. So you can kind of just say move on and do whatever you want. So in this case, I've got this custom element called mbop title, and in there, so register element, as it calls here, has so you give it the first parameter is the name of the element, and then you get this prototype, and it can be built off any HTML element. By default, it will receive HTML element prototype, which is just the generic for HTML. We could also, I believe brackets will help me here. So you can see there's essentially any element you want is available in this list. I haven't really figured out what that nets you, other than the browser will treat it somewhat like the other thing that you're prototyping it off of. I tried a list element to see if you'd get anything list-like, and it didn't really do anything. So I don't know if that's something where the spec isn't natively handled or what, but essentially, to start with, everything is going to be based off HTML element. And so the prototype is just like if you were creating your own browser and you wanted to instantiate, what happens with this element. And so if we look back here, I've listed there's 4 callbacks that you can do. And so these are essentially listeners for the browser to say, when an element like this is found, here's what I do. If it's when it's first created, do this. When it's attached to a document, do this. You can even look at attribute changes and do behaviors based on that event for a custom element. We're not going to look at any of those other than the created one, but I would recommend experimenting with it. And so the parameters here in this, and I think Kyle, you can share this repo, but you send it a property and a value, and what it would normally do is you could say something like, I want to set the value, so this would be the value attribute of that custom element, as though it were on the node itself. But we're kind of hijacking it and saying, all right, we know you're going to execute this function, so we're going to actually set the inner HTML of that element when it's created. So, I've got my snazzy stuff here. I'm going to save that. And, the marketing department went through the color scheme, and we got this. So the custom element now has been instantiated, so the browser says, hey, I know what to do with this. Okay, the created callback has been run, and in that I switched the inner HTML to all this mess. And hopefully you recognize some of the social networks there.
You did a pretty good job with that.
I did that. I did not copy any of those, but so that's a custom element. Any questions just on? So that's like foundational building block number 1, and we're going to kind of enhance that as we go. So the next thing, so all the custom style and stuff is actually encapsulated in that element. That's really inefficient to do. So really what I'd like to be able to do is send in content that the custom element can use. So in this case, we're going to look at this umbop welcome element. And so we want to take, if we had server-side code that was able to drop in the logged-in user's first name, let's say. So we have a custom greeting or something, but we wanted to manage the custom greeting on a element basis. So we could have different elements give you different things, different text. So in this case, we're gonna enlist the help of the shadow DOM, and hopefully the cheesy shadow comic book reference is not lost on people, but the shadow DOM is what knows what's going on inside the inner workings of your custom element. So we're all actually really familiar with the shadow DOM, and Chrome actually gives you a peek into it if you enable it. Let's see here. So if we look, yeah, we'll just go here. So if we look at this,
You make that bigger too.
Let me just detach it here. Okay. So if we look at it right now, there's essentially what we would know as just a DOM element with nothing in it. If we build in, so we do exact same instantiation for our custom element, but in this case we're gonna tell it to create a shadow root for the element. And what that will do, so now if we look, you get this thing called a shadow root. And that comes from encapsulating the root, so the shadow root creates essentially what would be a new document inside the document that the element's in. And that's what the Chrome DevTools will show the shadow root here, and then describe it in the same way that you're used to seeing the rest of your DOM without that. But you'll see this content tag. One of the things that you gain from using a shadow root is someone can use your custom element and drop content into it, and then that content can still be captured when the element is rendered. So in this case, we gain, I put name in there, we gain name, wherever I dropped it, in the content that I've put. So the script for that, it looks very similar, but you gain this content tab. So what you can see is in our HTML, obviously, we can drop HTML stuff in there, whatever we want, do some really weird things. Still not really the best way to do it, right? So we want to try to separate some of the concerns out as far as maybe your designers want to be able to custom design and style an element, or you want to split off some of the responsibilities, maybe for behavior. So in this case, we'll go back to our. So you can use HTML element templates to actually bring in the meat of your custom element. So in this case, we're gonna kind of combine a whole lot of things here. So the first thing is to look at using a template. So in this case, on my page, I've got a template tag, and this is something. The benefit of this is the browser won't render this, so you can just drop it in. You don't have to hide it, maybe with if you're familiar with Mustache templates or some of those where you actually put a script tag with a specific type and then pull that in. This way, you kind of don't have to worry about the weird stuff. You just call it a template tag, and here's the template. And then, so in this case, essentially what I'm doing is I'm just dropping a list of things into an actual UL element, and then wrapping that with something like a menu. So we'll look at this. So the remaining red box at the top there is my custom element, and it encapsulates more custom elements. But so if we look at the menu, it's the same syntax that we just did twice, except in this case we bring in the template, and it's just, you could use the query selector. Obviously is going to be browser version. You may have to bump against that potentially, but you could use it whatever you want to get that. And then you import the node into your custom element and create the shadow root and append that node into the shadow root. So in this case, now we'll see we have welcome. Let's see. So our menu then has a shadow root that contains these other custom elements that still have not been defined. So we know they're not defined because of the red border. So all this did was wrap everything inside a UL like that, and you can kind of get a glimpse of what's going on here. And the interesting thing is the content doesn't get inserted in; it still sits in the same spot that it was in your actual DOM hierarchy, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so the next thing, having the template on the page, you may gain performance benefits by doing that. You may still want to separate some of the concerns. So you want to bring in those elements rather than just templates. And in that case, we're going to use HTML import which also, once again, browser-specific stuff may not work. You have to check.
Do you want to show the content of that file?
Yeah. So in this case, I've got my template tag sitting in here. Notice there's no doc type, there's no extra stuff. So I've got a template tag, I've got my script, and that's really it. And so in my template, the template really is existing as though it were the doc type, like the start of my document. So I've got some style built in here. One of the cool things about this is that the shadow DOM will encapsulate style, and it won't go outside of the shadow root. So you can put, as you can see here, I put an anchor tag and colored it orange, which would conflict technically with my anchor tag definition here of colored blue. And so what we'll see, let's open this one up. So what this will do is for each menu item, it's going to place the content inside a list element and an anchor tag, and then present that wherever it goes. One of the little gotchas as I was doing this is that if you do an HTML import, referencing the parent document, so the index HTML, is not as easy as just, well, no, sorry, referencing the included document is not as straightforward as just using document. Document refers to the parent rather than the container. So in this case, there may be a better way to do this, but in this case, currentscript.owner document says that's the imported one, not the parent document. So in here, same exact script to instantiate it. This says, now you'll notice the element itself is not in here, which is a little different, but it says anytime I get that, I'm going to do the prototype the same way, same thing. I'm going to set the value, which really is, if you were going to do that, you would return something, but in this case we're hijacking it and saying, all right, so I found my template, I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did on the previous one where the template was in the document, and in this case we kind of say, all right, this doc says internal to this, that doc says wherever I'm importing this to, then import the node, and then create a shadow root and append that node. So the net result is that, let's see, did I save that? Net result is that
Error.
Let's see. When? Oh, there is an error, isn't there? Oh.
I'm not running a server.
Oh, okay. Shoot. Well, I will describe what you would see.
Well, here, you could just run the Python simple HTTP from that directory.
The casserole I made before has sunk, so I'm going to pull up another one.
I think it's there's a Python simple HTTP server. Oh, you know what? They do this in the it's in the Polymer. That's where I learned how to do it.
You're really jumping the gun now, Kyle.
Sorry.
Not even
there
done.
it is. Python M simple HTTP. Did I misspell it?
It's all caps for HTML. Yeah.
Rookie mistake.
Sorry.
Sever.
You just killed it. Hey.
All right.
Oh, hang on. I gotta stop the other one. There we go.
Okay. There. So now we gain the list item and the anchor tag and key in on the fact that the link is orange. So the top level, like the parent document styled, has no bearing on what gets styled. Now, there is a way to override that. I've had trouble getting it to work. But if supposedly, if you use this /deep/ inside, so it would be your custom element /deep/ and then the element you want to style, supposedly that's supposed to work. I had not gotten that to work. And so that essentially boils down, if we look at what we're talking about, templates, imports, and then there's a little bit of weirdness about importing with the document. That's web components in a nutshell. And so like you can see that's kind of a hassle. Hopefully you're thinking there's got to be a better way, and that's where I say, come on up, Kyle.
First, any questions about
any questions? Yeah.
I ask very simple questions.
That's good.
First, I see the polymer. Does the polymer, I look at your script, the HTML file.
Yeah.
Do we need to reference any polymer.js, just like Angular? Or
so in this case, there's no Polymer built on. Like this is what you would use if you were using just native JavaScript and the browser. So the addition of Polymer, which Kyle will talk about, there are scripts and things that you'll have to add. There's some dependencies.
Does that mean the browser understand the registration, those
Yeah.
things?
So Chrome and on the webcomponents.org website, it lists compatibility. Right now, really only Chrome and Opera and mobile Chrome are the ones that support it. I think I saw somewhere where iOS 8, the browser will support it, but Safari won't, so I don't know where that's all going. But Firefox supports a subset of it. I think they support custom element registration, but not some of the other things. But yeah, so for the purposes of making this a lot easier, wherever you make it easier, you're going to have polyfills to make browser compatibility not be an issue, other than like IE9 and below won't, well, IE8 and below won't work. But if you're doing web components, you're probably looking at the future anyway. So, any other questions? Yeah.
I got a couple.
Yeah.
The second one, my question is, I see the web component.
Mm-hmm.
Web component is almost like a container containing the HTML. Is there any way, or in the future, we can send events into the component? They react. What's communication between components?
Yeah. So, like, let's say if you were using Angular, for example, you'd still be able to use these custom components. You'd probably have to do a little bit of wiring for event bubbling. So because you don't get that built in with just native web components. Now, like that's saying to handle it in a custom way. Things like clicks and things like that all bubble regardless.
So does the component have some kind of event interface? Normally, if you come from the desktop, a component normally have a container also has the event interface.
Right. So in that case, in this, you'd have to build that in. So where I've hijacked the value, you'd probably have to put in custom event, whatever you want it to do, you'd have to put that in here. And that's why when you see Polymer, you'll go, why would I even bother using the native style? So it's similar to the way that the way that jQuery and other frameworks have done event handling and things like that, where yeah, you can do it in native JavaScript and it's not a big deal, but it's not built, it's something you have to write, and they make it easier to write it.
My third question is, I'm kind of familiar with AngularJS.
Yeah.
Compared to the web component, AngularJS can also write custom component.
Right.
What's the advantage using web component instead of AngularJS?
So in AngularJS, like a directive, we'll say, so a directive is not natively handled by the browser. So in this case, and I'm saying this not really knowing, I haven't performance tested this, but I believe that browsers will be more optimized to handle these types of things than they would or a library that then goes and looks for its own directives and things like that. There's more overhead just to do that, I guess, is what I would say.
If they build in language into the code, they can probably.
Yeah, that's very true. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah. So you're passing this created callback that's an object, has a key value, and then the value of that is a function. What actually is happening there? What is this created callback object actually? You know, what can you pass there? Is it just?
So, I mean, the idea would be, like, let's say we were creating an input element. So if we were doing that, like in this case, I could set a default value on that. And really, like, we're familiar with a shadow DOM type of behavior like this because things like, what's the...
Select.
In the text input, you can have placeholder. I kept wanting to say pre. Like the placeholder, it's essentially the same thing. It's behind the scenes doing something that the browser then interprets in a certain way. In this case, you could do the same thing with a text box and have it pre-populate with text. So value in this case, like I could, in fact, let's see. We'll just do this for the sake of seeing it, but. So in here, I could actually do this, and it really should set an attribute on this that's foo, but it doesn't. So, oh, this is the wrong one. So it may be restricted. I haven't really dug into the spec enough to, like, the hijacking of value is the one thing I know works. I think it may also require a function to do it. But yeah, so I don't know if that may be something that's accessible then through script, but doesn't appear in the DOM. I'm not real clear on that. But that's the idea is that you could set attributes of the element itself in here. Any other? Yeah, Patrick.
One thing that stands out is conceptually it seems similar to directed. It's very new to me, but the one thing that stands out is prototype. Can you derive from one of these components?
Yeah. So I was yes, and I'm not real sure how to do that other than you create a new reference to it, and maybe register element may have a return that gives you that base. But I know because you would want, there are cases, as you dig deeper into this, there are cases where you might want a parent-child type of relationship where the child inherits. That I know that's capable of being done. I just don't know how to do it. But so the idea would be your app, and when Kyle looks at Polymer, like Google always talks about how, yeah, look how messy the HTML is for something like Gmail, where it's just nested divs all, many, many levels deep. Well, you could just as easily write that as, all right, here's navbar, address, custom tags that then are built, individual teams could build the custom element rather than having to figure out, one person having to figure out the nested divs and all that. So with this mess out of the way, we'll let Kyle talk about the better part of it.
Well, I'm glad,
Oh,
you wait.
I have one more thing.
What?
As part of the Google developer group, Google sometimes will try to give me topics to talk about. We're going to try to put on like an all-day conference, probably November 8th. It'll be minimal cost because usually Google will foot the bill for most of it. But it's supposed to be specifically on Polymer, and they're giving us some code labs and hackathon materials to do. So I'll try to post it on Meetup, but you may the Google Plus is probably where we do most of our communication. So if you look at it, I'm still trying to work out logistics for it, but we'll be doing a deeper dive into Polymer at that.
So the reason why we did that beginning there was because I know a lot of us have just started with jQuery, and there's a lot of people that just never took the time to go and see that, you know, maybe document.querySelector is exactly what I needed to use, and I don't need to include a library to you know, select an element. So that it's important to understand the foundation, and then you can just forget all of the foundation and use Polymer. So this all I mean, I'm really new to Polymer. I don't know, you know, I've built 2 little simple applications with it. They're both really kind of silly, but they demonstrate some of the nice things that you get with Polymer. But this all kind of came about because, wow, I guess I said okay Google at some point there. It's really weird. It's like with the phones, you can say "Okay, Google," and your phone will recognize your voice and will only unlock for you. But with these watches, anybody in the room can say "Okay, Google," and it'll just start doing things. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, so this kind of all came about because it's really weird. And I was talking about this earlier. There was a guy at a meetup over a year ago that came up to me after I had done an Angular talk and said, "Have you heard about Polymer?" And I said, I was kind of like, you know, shoot, here's another one. And he starts talking to me about Shadow DOM, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was doing the, you know, shake your head and nod kind of thing. And who knew that, you know, a year later that, you know, it's this thing and it's really awesome, and, you know, you can use it. And Google, you know, at Google I/O, Luke and I both got the opportunity to go to I/O this year. And I'm like, where are the Angular talks? And then, so I attended every single Polymer talk, and I kind of saw the light. And hopefully the purpose tonight is for me to kind of just get your interest peaked here, and then maybe you can, you know, start building your own Polymer application. So I think we did the raise of hands earlier. I think it was like 2 people raised their hands about Polymer, having used it. So if you guys haven't seen this already, this is really cool. This was kind of what they showcased at Google I/O. This is called Topeka. It's their showcase application, and the whole thing is web components, or it's Polymer and web components. And it's just a really cool application that has all of the animations. It has, and these are all things that you get just by using Polymer and these paper elements. You may have heard of material design. Get to see that with Android L. So they've got all these really cool things. So name the Italian semi-soft rich cheese with blue veins through it. So there, I don't know if you noticed the ripple effect. Like when I clicked on something, it's got that really cool effect. So Gorgonzola, all right, we got it. Coffee beans contain more caffeine than tea leaves. False. Oh, we got it. All right, 2 for 2. All right, anyway, so you sort of get the idea. Animations, cool, transitions, all the different effects. If you looked at the code, you would notice that it's just full of Shadow DOM. So that's Topeka. And pretty much everything that I learned about Polymer and how to use Polymer in a larger size application, this is out on GitHub. Just go and look at what they did, and you can sort of follow along and notice that it's not that hard to build a multi-page application. So yeah, check that out. And it also looks really nice on an iPhone, because iPhones have really good animations or frame rates. What's up?
A quick question: does the Polymer include animation?
Yes, Polymer has. Well, there's a platform.js that just kind of handles all the polyfills for you, and then when you add Polymer on top of that, that comes with, and you'll see there's a lot of core elements that you get and a lot of animations that you can just plug in and start using. So they've done a lot of the legwork for you. Let's make this larger. Okay, so getting started, a lot of this is just from the polymerproject.org website, but it's just, if you've used Bower before, it's really simple. Just get started. You would do Bower install, save Polymer, and then if you want the additional things, so this top part right here would give you polyfills, would give you everything that you need to do to start working with components, web components. These two additional things, core elements and paper elements, give you that really nice look. So core elements is like the base stuff as far as like nav drawers and buttons and things like that. Paper elements is what gives you all of the stuff that Google's pushing with material design. So it's not a Bootstrap site anymore. It's possibly a material design website. So using Polymer is just really simple. Once you've installed it, it's as easy as just adding the platform.js file, and then you can actually, just like Luke was showing with imports, you could then bring in whatever elements you want. So just a couple things to note here. Like they've got a core toolbar, which just gives you that nice little bar at the top, similar to Bootstrap, where you'd have a nav bar. And so you could add a core toolbar just by importing it, and we'll click here at the result. There you go. You have a toolbar. So pretty simple. Okay, so what's web components without using a bunch of web components all at once? So this is an example from their website where you've got a nav bar, you've got tabs on here, and they all have the sort of what I think they call this the ink effect. It has the little transition of this yellow bar that slides over, and then this has the sort of ripple effect on it when you press it, or this highlight. I'm not really sure what that does, but if we looked at the code of this really fast. Actually, let's just look at the source so you can see it. All I've done is imported the toolbar, some core icons, some paper buttons, some paper tabs, and then Roboto to get the font. Just a tiny bit of styling here, and then just normal HTML, but as you can see, you're using their web components. And they have all kinds of different things with the attributes that you can set. You just kind of have to check out the documentation. It's pretty simple. So I mentioned the core elements and the paper elements. I'm really excited about the paper elements just because I think Google has done a great job of catching up with, I guess, Apple's design. Apple went for the really flat design. Well, Google decided to go somewhat flat, but then they went three-dimensional with z-index. So you'll see a lot of cool z-index shadows and things like that with the paper design, or the paper elements. And it just Googled catch up. I gotta turn this thing off. Am I saying okay Google that much?
You said a lot of Googles.
Yeah, Google. So this is these are just links in this presentation that show all the different core elements. So if you haven't seen this before, there are a lot of core elements, and it's been probably a month and a half since I've done this. So I don't know if they've added new elements, but it's one of those projects where they've got a lot of people working on it, people constantly contributing to it. So it's evolving, and you have to watch out for version changes that are going to break your stuff. So that's still kind of happening. So like you're asking about the animations. So within the core elements, they've got these core animated pages, which is what you saw earlier, where as you clicked on something, it would blow up, and then you hit the back button, it shrinks back down to its normal size. You get that just by including core animated pages and setting up the HTML properly. They've got icon buttons, header panels, nav drawers. They have Ajax in here, so you could do core Ajax or core XHR. I'm not sure the difference between the two. Yeah, transitions and stuff. Oh, and then so then here are the paper elements. They've got the paper button, this cool thing called a paper fab. which is this. Usually, it looks like this little red dot that just kind of sits. You'll definitely see it if you guys have Android phones and you will get the L update. You'll definitely be seeing this stuff all over. So just with using Polymer and including that with your Bower install, you can easily just get core elements and paper elements. And then there's actually libraries. There's other websites that you can go to where people have submitted their components, and it's really simple to just go download their component, include the files in your project, and then just add their tag to the page, and there you go. Like Google has their own set of component, and I feel like I'm really promoting Google right now. Stop it. But they have there's a Google sign-in element where it'll add the Google authentication to your website just by adding the Google sign-in button. I said authentication to your website. I'm just gonna hide this. It's a really cool watch. I just got it. Was it last week? Huh? Motorola. The Moto 360. Luke's wearing the LG G watch. That's the square, and here's the round one. I'm just gonna put it right here. Where was I? Oh, and then they have there's a Google Map element where you can just take the Google Map tag and add it to your web page and set some attributes, and then you have a full-blown Google Map, and you have markers and all kinds of cool stuff. So, this stuff is really exciting, and it's a lot of fun, especially if you're say you're a freelancer and you're trying to build a really large application, and you don't have a big team and everything, and you got maybe one other person, you can just go to town on these components and just drop them in all over the place. So, so that's cool. That's all the stuff that Polymer provides out of the box. But what if you wanted to create your own element? So it's really simple. It's a lot easier than what Luke was showing you. It's as simple as this right here, where when you're creating your own Polymer element, the only thing that you really need to do is link to the polymer.html file, and then use their Polymer element, which they've created for you. You give it a name, and then if you don't want to run any JavaScript with it and you just want it to be plain old HTML and not really do anything, you add the noScript attribute, put your stuff in the template tag, and you're off and running. So let's view this in action. That's my really cool element. And then that's all I did to get my really cool element there. So that's pretty cool.
What is the unresolved attribute?
So unresolved is a Polymer attribute that it's sort of the, what is it, FOUC, the flash of unstyled content. So if as your application is sort of putting everything together and then the page loads, Polymer has its own event where it waits for everything to finish, and then when things are done, it will do a nice transition, like CSS3 transition, to fade everything in. So it's just that nice little touch. So yeah, so if you as you start to get the hang of this, you kind of go crazy thinking, okay, well, this is an element, and this is an element, and that's an element, and then next thing you know, your whole application is an element. And I can show you that, which is so that the simple sort of sample Polymer application that I built was a music player, and it was inspired by, here we go with Google again. I love Google Play. I've got my subscription. It's great. Any song I want to listen to. So I kind of started looking at this page and started identifying components. Like you've got the navigation there on the left. Well, that could be a component. And then each one of these menu items, like Luke was showing, could be a component. You have a sort of a card here with an image, and these can be components. And then this whole thing can be a component. And then you've got this player here at the bottom, which is its own component. So that's just, that's how I took it, and I thought, okay, I could probably build something like this. So I built something I call a Polymer player. And it looks really cool on an iPhone. Well, actually, it looks really good on a Samsung S5 because it's got a nice little screen. Here, let me show it. So it doesn't look really good. I only have like, what is this, 8 songs in here. And it's some of the music I like and listen to now. But I've got the, some Polymer elements in here. So like I've got the core toolbar up here, and then each one of these songs is a component that I created. And then I've created this component down here, which is the sort of the player. And then I've added the core animated pages from Polymer, which just you click on it and explodes out and adds the back button. Here's that paper fab I was talking about, which you can color. And so this is on my GitHub site, and on my local it actually plays music, but I didn't feel like putting MP3s out there for you guys to steal, which you probably would do anyways. And then the question about the events earlier, so these are separate components. Polymer has a really nice feature where you can bubble up events, and then you can have events that are sort of listening for things to happen, or other elements listening for things to happen. So we have this component right here, and then this player down here. So when I click the play button, you'll see that they both turn to pause buttons. So if I were in a, let's go to another element. So you can see we're playing The Bending by Hope's Fall right now. So if I went into the contortionist, you'll see that these are independent of each other. But then if I play it, pause it, you can do sort of the pub sub type style with it. So let me show you how it looks mobile. I like that. What do you say we go with a Nexus 5? So I mean, it's pretty cool. And what's really nice about this is if you wanted to, and you don't want to mess around with Objective-C or Java, just wrap this in PhoneGap, and there you go. You've got pretty awesome looking application that is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I think that's pretty powerful.
How long did that project take?
One weekend while watching both my kids while my wife was out of town. It was, like I said earlier, it was a lot of just looking at the Topeka application. If you look at, and my source code is out on GitHub, if you go look at my source code versus the Topeka source code, you're going to see a lot of similarities. I didn't actually copy and paste it, but at the end when I looked at it, you would think that I copied and pasted it. So I swear I didn't. So like I said, some of the elements that I've got in here, core animated pages, core signals. Core signals is the way to communicate between the different elements. Core Ajax, so this is actually loading, the application loads from a JSON file, just a JSON file that has all of the different, an array of songs in there and images to go look for. The core header panel, core toolbar, paper icon button, and paper fab. So that's it. I mean, that was all the stuff that I really needed to build kind of I'm not trying to brag, but I think it's a pretty cool looking thing. I'm not a designer. My wife is, and I'm lucky that way. But so here's how it looks on the web. We already did that. So let's take a look at the code. As I said, so this whole thing just runs off of a JSON file. So as I update this, the application's dynamic. It's not hard coded. And then one thing to note here that this is one of my favorite parts about Polymer is if you look here, my whole application is just a tag that has a URL pointing to the JSON file that I want to load for my music player. So I think that's pretty cool. So if somebody wanted to use this, they could really just grab that, import do a link and an import to my project, and then just put that on there. I think that's cool. So we'll just dive into a couple of the components here. So, so the array of songs, as you see as they sort of create that grid, this is where you'll start to see a lot of similarities between Angular and Polymer. And I don't know what you guys have read or heard, but I've been told, or I've heard through the grapevine, that Polymer and Angular are not going to combine. I could be wrong when I say this, but I've heard that they're going to keep running their separate paths, but there's nothing stopping you from using them side by side. So one of the things that you'll find that Polymer doesn't provide is it doesn't provide routing. Angular does a really good job with that. So if you wanted to, I think somebody, as Eric Beidelman from Google, has done a project where he's used this other component called a flat iron director. I haven't looked at it. I don't know what it is, but it helps make your page or your application respond to URL changes. But from what I understand, Angular in version 2.0 is going to support web components, and then so I think when 2.0 comes out, you'll just be able to, it'll be a match made in heaven, I think. From what I understand about Polymer is that Polymer provides you the ability to use web components, but at the same time, they like to be that nice UI layer, similar to how Bootstrap is sort of the nice UI layer for every responsive website that everyone does. And I really like Bootstrap. I need to stop knocking it. So a lot of the things that are similar with Angular, you'll see in here where you've got the double curly braces, meaning you're going to substitute in a variable. You can do similar things like, say this was ng style in Angular. Well, it's just style here, and you can do the same thing where you can set styles based on variables. Here is where I'm actually printing out the title of the song and the artist. And then here's how you repeat over items. So rather than using ng repeat like you would in Angular, you just use repeat as your attribute. You have your array and you just iterate over it. Any questions so far? Any confusion? Yeah. Well, we'll start here.
That's not web components, right?
This is Polymer syntax. Like, this is Polymer attributes.
And just to clarify, Polymer is built on top of web components. That's why you still have the dash in the name and things like that.
Yeah. All right, the other question.
When you look at your code structure, I noticed one thing I'm not really sure is true or not. Traditional Angular job have JS, HTML, directive, controller, everything separate. Here, it seems to me everything you include, you put in the HTML file. Is that true? Every HTML is a component.
Yeah, so there's been an updated style guide to Angular where they're switching over to more of a component-based model. So in older Angular applications, you'll see a folder for controllers and directives and filters and views and that kind of thing. What they're starting to suggest that people move to is that you would have, in this case, you'd have player controls, and then within your player controls directory, you'd have a player controls.html, then you'd have a player controls controller.js, and then you'd have a player controls directive.js. And so you would start to you should start thinking of well, this is the opinionated style guide to the updated opinionated style.
Like boilerplate, and everything is a component. But here, do you put every JavaScript and everything in the HTML file?
Well, you can, but I'll show you here. So let's look at one where I'm actually running some JavaScript. So far, it doesn't. Actually, I think I included my JavaScript in the HTML down here. Yeah. So what you can do, all right. So Polymer gets this. This kind of brings up another topic. Polymer can get really nasty in the fact that if you have separated everything out, so you've got your separate HTML file, a separate style sheet, and a separate JavaScript file for each component, that's 3 network requests. So one thing that they recommend is using this tool called Vulcanize, which will take your 3 files that you've created and combine them all into one. So your 3 network requests just comes to 1 network request. So if you separated everything out, like if you were working in with a team, of course it makes sense to separate all that stuff out. But when it comes to production and the user and load times, it makes a lot more sense to combine all this stuff together and spit it out as one thing as opposed to 3. So for whatever reason, in this case, I decided to. Well, actually, there's another application I was working on where I did go the other route, where I had a JavaScript file, an HTML file, and a CSS file with each component. So you can have your script on the HTML file and the styles on the HTML file, or you can. And if you download Polymer and you start diving into their components, you'll see that they've done that. They've separated out every single file, and I think it's purely out of just making it as modular as can be, so you can have as many people working on it at a time as you need. And then the one component that I was particularly proud of, and I need to figure out how to better code this. But one of the new things about material design is whatever the dominant color is in your imagery, they like to use that color to. I think the status bar right now for everybody is, I think, black. But as you if you click on an image for something, then the dominant color is going to become your status bar, and then the buttons on there are all going to sort of morph to, or not morph, but become. What's the word? Not contribute. Complementary colors. So I built this thing here, this component called Color Thief, and colorthief.js. If you haven't used it, it's a really cool little library where you can give it any image, and it'll go and give you an array of all the colors in it, of all the complementary colors and the dominant color. So I just included this Color Thief file in here, and this is made by the same guy who did Lightbox. So I'm pretty sure everybody's used Lightbox. Well, this is the other thing he did. So what I've done in my application is I thought, okay, well, let's try to use that idea of using a dominant color. So I just used his library and did a couple things to change everything from. He gives you an RGB value, so I just converted it to hex, so it is a lot easier to use as just as a style. You could use RGBA, but I chose not to. So where's my Polymer player? So you'll see here, like when I click on hum, this button takes that dominant color. And then if I go back to Hope's Fall, my button takes that color here. And it's all of these colors here are just done dynamically by Color Thief.
So they're coming from the image.
Mm-hmm. So it's taken but if you watch my page load, you'll see that it takes a minute for it to get the colors. So I don't know how to make it faster. So you see the colors aren't quite there, and then the image loads. When the image is done loading, it knows what color. So it's kind of waiting. And these images are gigantic, so that's probably why. I guess if I turn cache, where is it? So that's a lot faster. So you'd probably just get it for new albums that were just released.
You might get sped up by changing the way your image loads. So you know some load a really low resolution image first and then update it.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. Yeah. I don't remember what size these images are, but I'm pretty sure that they're. So I grabbed them from Google Play, and they're pretty large on there. So
what's the context of the scripts you put in there? That's in the context of the main window, or is it?
Well, this script was, just included in this particular component, so it's only in that component, right?
Right.
And I don't.
You have your script tag, the same thing.
Where are we looking here? And
go back.
You want to look at this one?
Your JavaScript, right?
Down here.
Yeah, I noticed you wrapped it in a closure. previously, but this one is. So if you made a global variable in here with
Oh, go back.
XLO,
Go back to the thief thing. Okay, I don't know why I did that, but I did it.
right, so if you didn't do that, would component hex be available?
I don't know. I would assume no. Just by the nature of web components trying to keep things out of, like similar to his styles, where he had his styles that only affected that particular component. Based on that, I would assume that
because this is encapsulated inside a shadow root, that it's not necessarily going to be like it will have access to the global scope, I think, but.
Did you have to do anything extra to access that global scope?
well, isn't it document within here, like you were showing earlier? The document is the parent.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, window is going to be window here, wherever the element is.
Sorry.
You failed.
I did. Okay, so I think that's pretty awesome. Can I use Polymer now? The answer is yes, but not everywhere. So current compatibility is Chrome, Android, Chrome, Canary, Firefox, IE 10 Plus, Safari 6 Plus, and Mobile Safari. And this is the source, and it's updating. So and they show in here what you get by using the polyfill and what you would get if you use just native web components and who's actually supporting it right now. So it doesn't look like, I mean, IE10's a little behind here. And then there was something that went really weird with Safari where they pulled something out not too long ago, and I guess they're deciding to put it back in. I don't remember what that was. I also noticed during the keynote for Apple that if you tried to load their live video feed on Chrome, it didn't work. I thought that was a really nasty trick. Well, it just was so stupid. I'm like, come on now, like use like HTML5 video and just let everybody. I was a little peeved by that. Okay, so there's this other tool that that the Polymer team has been working on called Polymer Designer. It is just it's an application built in Polymer that helps you build Polymer applications, and it's a drag and drop interface. So all of the things that I mentioned, as far as like all the components that come with the core elements and paper elements, you can. This site, it never works for me. They did it at I/O and it worked perfectly, of course. But I didn't check to see if they were at www.polymerproject instead of localhost 8000 or something like that.
It took like 30 seconds.
But it's got this, so what you can do is you can drag and drop the elements onto the page, and then there's a tab where you can view the script that the script that it generated, and then you can even save it as a gist in GitHub, so you could then grab it from, oh, there it goes. You could grab it from the gist and use it in your application. There was, during one of the presentations at I/O, they said that a guy from Salesforce took a portion of their Salesforce iOS application and rebuilt it using Polymer, just using this tool, which I think is pretty cool if it works. So let me just, I don't know what an ace element is. There's chart.js, here's Google Map. Let's do core stuff here. So we'll put a drawer panel out there. I've never been able to get this to save, but you can go in here and edit some of these attributes. Most of these aren't very intuitive, so you kind of have to go look at the documentation to figure out what these attributes actually do. But if you go and click on here, you can see here's all just by dragging that thing onto the page, here's all the stuff that's generated, and you can save it, copy paste, and it's kind of an easy way just play around with the different elements. When I was messing around with this, I had issues where I'd put the element on the page, but it wouldn't have any height, and I couldn't figure out why. So I'd come here, drag it onto the page, and then say, oh, it's because of this particular style or this attribute I didn't add. So it was helpful. And then the resources for all this, just go to polymerproject.org. They've got a lot of good videos, tutorials. By clicking on Learn and getting started, you build a little tabbed application that has these cards and introduces you to all the different paper elements. It's pretty cool, and you can wrap it like I did this. I wrapped it in PhoneGap, and I have it as a little sample application on my phone, so I can, when I'm in a meeting and I have some time, I can be like, hey, check out this. We should do this. And that's really it. So what do you guys think?
So have you done anything with kind of hooking up Angular to it?
I haven't done that yet.
I'm interested to see if you can actually like drop in a template, how things sync up, and it'll sync there, and also sync with the components.
Well, I think that is the 2.0 part. So I don't know about right now. I haven't tried it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about the same thing. Does this combine with Angular then? And
let's Google it.
Do you find yourself saying just?
I'll ask you what.
Look at this, Eric. So did I say Beidelman? Is it Beidel? I think I said Beidelman. Anyway, one thing I found with these guys that are working on Polymer is I did the lame contribution of updating a demo, and they took my pull request. I was pretty happy. So I've actually worked on Polymer, just the demo though. But these guys are really fast at getting back to you. So if you have questions or want to contribute, they're always looking for help, and they're really quick to get back to you. But I mean, apparently it looks like it's a Polymer experiment, Polymer and Angular together. I don't know. I think I would just Google it and see what you can find.
So I Googled the JavaScript question I had, and it looks like it's treated as normal JavaScript. It's not.
So it's not encapsulated. That's interesting. I wonder why they would do that for style, but not for JavaScript. Because I think they would give you the way to, hook into a global part to it, but still do its best to keep it in its own little world.
Is that native, or is that just Polymer?
Well,
Polymer just wrote JavaScript, so maybe put it in, but maybe they can't. Basically, they're actually turning Polymer into that. Well, it's not part of Web Components, right? So.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention that I failed to, and I don't know where my GitHub stuff went. My wife. She wasn't happy about that picture. Let's go to songs. So the one piece that I forgot to mention is how to use the JavaScript part with. So Luke was talking about there were, was it 4 or 5 different callbacks that you can tie into. Polymer uses a lot of this. It uses the same callbacks, but they've named them slightly different. I think they've shortened the callback a little bit. So the things that Luke was showing, as far as the callbacks when you instantiate an object, those are all still there, so you can use them. And I'm trying to find a spot. I have another application that I was working on that does a little bit more of this.
That's not it. That's in.
Oh. So we're trying to build this application called Am I Funny, where I tell a lot of bad jokes, and I would like to know over time how bad am I on a scale from 0 to 5. So if I were to tell a joke, you'd be able to pop your phone out and find my name real quick and just give me a 0 or a 2 or something like that. So let's see here. Second negative. So here's an example of the so the ready function that they've got, the ready callback. So this means that it's ready and you can start using it.
But is that the $? Is that jQuery? Line 8?
This is a way to select an element by ID. It's weird. So if you were to look at my HTML for this, you would see I have an element called pages. So that's how you can select it.
That's
it's a Polymer thing. Yes, not Web Components.
What about if I found a good library of just a JavaScript library, third party, graphic, whatever good line, can I plug in that one to the Polymer component?
Yeah, I mean that's what I did with Color Thief. So I just grabbed the Color Thief library that somebody else created and just added it as a script tag to my component, and it just worked.
And just normal JavaScript just plug in.
Yep.
So the idea with this, and this is for Polymer and just native web components, is in your component where you have like an HTML import, that's essentially dependencies for your component. Like where his Color Thief component requires that. And the benefit is, if you have multiple components that reference the same script, you get the benefit of caching. So it's not, even if multiple components are calling the same script, it's not going to go make repeat calls as long as it's cached.
Yeah, and that was a question that came up in the last time we did this. Is what if you have two components that are loading the same library? And then what happens, or no, loading different version libraries. So let's say you've got two different versions of jQuery being loaded. I don't know what happens. I don't know if the jQuery global then becomes the last one loaded, which is what I would assume. But if you're working with somebody else's component and you're both using competing versions of the same library, I don't know what happens. I think that at that point you just need to be mindful of what you're actually using instead of just plopping an element onto the page and hope that it doesn't blow things up. So, and then one other thing I wanted to mention is I just kind of covered how to create an element and some of the other elements provided by Polymer. They also have these really cool layout attributes, and this is one thing that got a lot of people really excited at the I/O sessions that I was at. Just by adding these different attributes like horizontal and layout to your elements, you can accomplish a lot of these layout styles that you spend a lot of time in CSS trying to figure out how to get it just right. And then the one thing that they were particularly proud of is that using these attributes, you can really easily horizontally and vertically center an element with a dynamic height, which is really cool. So, yeah, so not only do they give you web components, but they also did all of these really cool styling and layout attributes and touch and gestures and all that other good stuff. So. Changes your world. All right, so that's it. That's all I've got. Thanks for coming out.